More than 10,000 meters above the Atlantic Ocean, a passenger plane carrying more than 300 people suddenly leaked all the fuel. Both engines have lost power. In the vast sea, did the plane crash into the sea and be smashed to pieces? Or will a miracle happen? The story takes place on August 23, 2001. The protagonist is Yueyang Airlines Flight 236. The route is from Toronto, Canada, fly to Lisbon, Portugal. The flight takes about 7 hours. The direct flight of this flight is Airbus A330 Type 200. This is a new aircraft that was produced 2 years ago. If the previous aircraft were to make a long-distance flight, at least 3 people are required in the cockpit. And in this highly intelligent Airbus aircraft, long-haul flight engineers are no longer needed. This flight was carrying 293 passengers and 13 crew members. The aircraft was refueled with 47.9 tons of fuel and 5.5 tons of spare fuel. This is enough for this route. Around 052, Flight 236 from Toronto Airport, after flying smoothly for about 5 hours. At this time, it was about 11,000 meters above the Atlantic Ocean. The plane is flying smoothly in autopilot mode, and the cabin was silent, except for a few insomniacs. The rest of the passengers fell asleep. Suddenly, the sound of an alarm in the cockpit broke the silence. Alarm from oil pressure system. Engine 2 is sending out oil temperature is too low. And high oil pressure alarms. Low oil temperature usually means that the oil temperature detector is malfunctioning. And when the oil pressure is too high, the oil temperature will only be high, not low. But these two failures usually cannot occur simultaneously, so the two pilots are confused. They consulted the airline, but the maintenance department couldn't find the cause of the problem for a while. We can only recommend that the crew continue to monitor the aircraft first. The plane's fuel consumption is much faster than usual at this time. The multi-Airbus A330 uses a multi-screen monitor. It can be switched to display various information of the aircraft. Display according to the data of the panel. The fuel level on the right side of the aircraft is lower than that on the left side. The crew believes that this could be the computer that controls the fuel section. Something went wrong, cause false positives. Warning of fuel imbalance in both tanks. This is in the highly automated Airbus A330. Happens from time to time to correct the imbalance in the fuel tanks on both sides. The captain opened the transfer valves of the fuel tanks on the left and right sides. The fuel in the left fuel tank, compensation to the right fuel tank. Under normal circumstances, after completing this operation, the alarm will disarm itself. But it backfired, so far from getting better. It's not getting better, instead, it got worse. The captain asked the purser and another flight attendant to the porthole. Check if the wings are dragging something. There may be fog or liquid. But due to the darkness and the reflection of the glass porthole, the flight attendant failed to pass the visual inspection. See what's wrong with the engine. Around 5:48 in the morning, the co-pilot said to the captain, the right fuel tank and the middle balance tank are all bottomed out. Not a drop of oil, fortunately, over the Atlantic. Not as empty as the map shows. The closest airport to them, it's Lajish Air Force Base in the Yasa Islands. So the plane started to change course. 6:15 a.m. The plane's No. 2 engine stalled. The captain has many years of driving experience, quickly disconnected the autopilot, and dropped the plane to 10,000 meters. At this time, the plane is approximately 217 kilometers away from the airport. 6:26 a.m. Engine number 1 also stopped running due to running out of fuel. This makes Flight 236. It became the first large aircraft manufactured by Airbus. Wide-body unpowered glider. Most of the plane's power supply was cut off at this time. All unnecessary electronic devices have been turned off, including electricity. All other light sources including submeters are shut down. The machine, there is also a small air ram turbine generator. You can generate electricity with propellers that are powered by aerodynamic forces, providing some power to the aircraft to maintain the most basic flight instrumentation display and radio contact. The crew quickly issued the highest level of distress code. At this moment, passengers in the cabin have been told to prepare for an emergency landing and put on a life jacket. But don't inflate yet. Passengers are eager to make an emergency landing at sea. There was widespread pessimism and despair. Even if the crash landing is successful, it may also be buried in the belly of the fish due to lack of timely rescue. Not to mention, it's hard to make an emergency landing in the sea. 1996. A Boeing 767 aircraft was photographed making an emergency landing in the Indian Ocean. Under the wing, huge engines create tremendous drag, so as to tear the whole plane apart. But prepare for the worst, do your best. The crew decided to fly the plane to the air base as much as possible. 6:39 a.m. The captain passed the turnaround, after lowering the height and opening the landing gear. The speed of the plane is still maintained at around 200 knots. This is much higher than the normal required landing speed of 120 to 140 knots. 6:46 a.m. Just 20 minutes after both engines turned off at the same time. The plane was traveling at 201 knots, landing on runway 33 at Air Force Base. Due to the fast grounding speed, and cannot use the thrust reversal device, the captain quickly presses down the joystick after grounding, to maximize the pressure of the nose on the ground. 8 of the 10 tires of the landing gear, it will soon burst due to high-speed friction. Rescue vehicles were already on standby near the runway. They are also accelerating to catch up with the plane. After sliding for more than 10 seconds, the plane finally landed on the runway. Only 2 flight attendants and 16 passengers were slightly injured. This could be one of the greatest events in aviation history, but nothing unexpected happened during the flight. So, there is no abnormal sound, no impact, no violent bumps, no lightning strikes. Fuel consumption was normal for the first few hours of the flight. Brand new aircraft. How could you suddenly lose fuel while cruising smoothly? Portugal, Canada and France have established an accident investigation team. They found a problem with the plane's right engine. The right engine of Flight 236. This is a little hydraulic tube. It's a lot thinner than an oil pipeline. Due to the vibration of the hydraulic system, let the hydraulic tube and the biggie tube rub against each other. Finally, it wore through the biggie tube and caused a fuel leak. But it's not a matter of aircraft design or quality, it is caused by improper maintenance. Some wearing parts need to be replaced regularly. Repair, the engineers used an old engine part, temporary replacement. The engineer reported this to the leader, but the company still decided to put this potentially dangerous airliner back on course, instead of waiting for new parts to arrive. Although, the parts of the replacement and the evidence are only a few millimeters apart, but it's this tiny gap. But it nearly cost hundreds of lives in the Atlantic. Okay, this video will stop here first. May the miracle happen again. May the plane crash never happen again. See you next time.